And I want to thank, of course, of all of the wonderful artists and the artistic team that helped to put this together. I will first start. I'm just looking at the screen. I'm going to go in order here to our wonderful mezzo-soprano, Deborah Rausengaus. Yay, Deborah! To our wonderful soprano, Cecilia Violeta Lopez. Yay, Cecilia! And of course, our wonderful tenor, Emmanuel Mercado. So a great, how indebted I am to these wonderful artists who contributed to making this so possible. And then to our artistic team here, I will start. I will start. Oh, there's an echo, so I've got to get rid of this echo. Hold on for a second. And of course, our wonderful tenor. Okay, so I want to thank Tricia Creason-Valencia, head of Baca Studio, and my co-director, and also Aaron Altmark of Visual Endeavors, the Unreal Engine technical director, and also Ramiro Seguro, our editor. I want to thank Tricia, thank you all so much. And I'm going to hand this over to Tricia, who's volunteered to be our moderator. Also, Aaron Altmark of Visual Endeavors, the Unreal Engine technical director, and also Ramiro Seguro, our editor. I want to thank Tricia, thank you all so much. And I'm going to have
All right. So I'm going to help moderate any questions you all might have as the audience. So what we're hoping you'll do is put those in the chat, and then I will open it up and direct it to the right folks that you want to speak to. I'm going to start it off with, I think, what is probably a softball for the performers. Can you talk a little bit about how this experience was different than a typical opera performance for you?
I'll go ahead and start on this one. This thing that we did, we all came together, but very separately. So we all learned our music and we all recorded our bits, but we were all separate in different studios. So we've never been in a rehearsal space together like we would with a usual opera. And so having to make this project come together, and for example, I was the first one to record my track, and I thought that, just the pressure of knowing that I'm the first one, that I was the first one to record. I thought, oh no, I hope I don't mess anything up. Like poor Deborah, because we have that duet together. So there was that added pressure of being extra super perfect so that nothing would go badly for my colleagues. But it was tricky. It was a new learning experience for me, and it was fun regardless, even though that we were all by ourselves.
Would Deborah or Emmanuel like to respond?
Sure. We're used to performing in a theater where your audience is, 30 feet, 50 feet, 100 feet, 1,000 feet away from you, whatever it is. And in the studio, the microphone's right here, and in the other studio, the camera's right here. So it has a totally different vibe, and I'm sure like my colleagues, I thrive personally on feeling the energy from the audience, and that keeps me going. And when they're into it, I go even harder, But when you're in a studio, there's none of that feedback. So it's a lot of, was that okay? I hope that was okay. Did you like it? So it feels like a totally different beast, but really unique experience. It's really been a pleasure to do it.
Thank you, Deborah. Emmanuel, would you like to weigh in?
Yep. For me, it was a real pleasure. I just can't imagine how they put together everything, all the pieces on the puzzle, and the technicians, they did a great work. And thank you for the work team. That's it.
We have a question from the audience, and it's directed at all cast and crew. So whoever wants to take this one can. Why did you decide to agree to take on this project? What magic did Hector work on you to get you to do it?
The money. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No,
Laughing face emojis.
when Maestro talked to me about the project, I thought, for me anyway, it hit home particularly because I grew up working in the fields, and I grew up born and raised in Idaho, and I used to hoe beets, sugar beets out with my mom and my older brother. And when he told me that he was taking these stories of these farm workers and putting them to music, I thought, oh my gosh, these are stories that never get told, you know, or we sometimes just take them for granted. All of the food, what it says in the music, the food that we have on our tables, it's, you know, we don't think about those things. And to have, when Maestro said that he was doing this project and the way that he was doing it with this animated version of an opera, which is completely mind-blowing in and of itself, but then to have these unheard stories finally give them a platform, you know, to share them with the world, I think for me that was the most important, I guess, the hook the hook for me, because it was really personal, important to me from that aspect.
Would anyone else like to respond to that?
Yep. For me, it's so important this because few of us, we have some family putting food on our tables, and now there is so hard. Then this is so important to sing, to talk, to expand and let the people know about this kind of work, how hard it is. Just that.
Okay, we've had some more questions come in from the audience. This question is for Hector from Sylvia Ruiz. I can only imagine the magnitude of the personal stories you collected. How did you select themes or specific details?
Sure. Hi, Sylvia. So glad you could join. We worked with a number, you know, Opera Cultura worked, you know, reached out to a number of partners. One was the Harvest Food Bank in Gilroy. Another one was AWS, which is based in Half Moon Bay. They're a performing arts organization, but they also provide a lot of services. And then we also reached out to Vegilution. So we contacted them about the project, how we might, you know, find individuals that would be interested in being part of the interview. I also went with a friend of mine, Darlene Tennis, and when in the sort of the midst of the pandemic, she had organized a food distribution to the farm workers, and I passed out flyers. But it was, you know, initially it was a challenge. I think a lot of folks just did not want to be interviewed on film. And so, you know, I just looked at we were able to do a number of interviews, and certain themes just surfaced. And they just seemed like they would lend themselves to a mystical rendering.
Thank you. We have another question. This one is from Adnan Hussein. For the directors, writers, what motivated your decision to animate some parts of the story, but to have the singers visible against the animated backdrop for other parts? It was really interesting.
Yeah. So there's like a public response and then the private.
I think
sort
this
of
is
behind
family.
the scenes.
This is private.
Yeah, this is okay. This is private.
The real deal.
So initially, I was going to have the singers wear motion capture suits, and then the avatars were going to sing. That was the initial idea. And for two reasons, I changed my mind on that. One was just, you know, the technology piece was just a little bit too complicated to manage. And then also, I remember when I was watching Cecilia, she was recording doing her audio recording in New Mexico, and I was I was zooming in from Oakland, where I live. And when I saw her emote, I realized there's no way an avatar is going to capture an opera singer's, you know, the power of an opera singer singing. I mean, there's nothing like it on stage, and there's definitely not. I realized there's nothing going to be like that on film. And then the sort of the behind the scenes piece was, I worked, Tricia had said, Hector, do a storyboard. I didn't even know what a storyboard was. So I did a storyboard, and okay, I'm going to jump to the end of the story. The end of the story is that I imagined myself being a director and realized that that is definitely not as my skill set. And that is someone who is a film director. And so I worked with Tricia in deciding what parts would be sung, what parts would be performed by the avatars, what parts would be performed by the avatars. And our wonderful Aaron here also worked and provided sort of last minute landscape sort of drone images. And so it sort of really was a collaboration in terms of what the final piece looked like. And so I'm really grateful to them, and of course to our wonderful editor Ramiro. It's just, it's really, you have an idea of what it's going to be, but then when you finally see it, you're like, wow, so.
Yeah. And I can add on to that as someone who's on the editing team. Ramiro and I edited it together. And I do see things as a visual artist. So the music was already in place. It was absolutely beautiful. The words were from the farm workers. So the intentionality around making sure that their voices were uplifted in the piece was there. That was done beautifully already by the singers. So we had to figure out, like, okay, what visuals do we have that can accompany and even add extra layers to the stories that folks are hearing sung. And I'm not a gamer, so I came to the animated footage being like, what now? And just really trying to sort of incorporate that for myself and figure out, like, where's the emotionality in this? It's cool and it's fascinating to me, but is it bringing those sort of emotional beat moments? Those are the kinds of questions I would say to Hector. And often the answer would be cut to the singer, because they are performers and they are full of pathos, and they can absolutely help bring our viewers into that moment and just to the meaning. So it ended up being this trick of, like, how do we meld and show the beauty of the technology and the beauty of the landscapes because of Aaron's animations, Aaron's drone work. Like, the place matters, and the place matters when you're making a film about the fields and being a farmer, right? So we just had to figure out, like, how to interweave all the different elements, and that's what we would always be taking into account. It's like, what's going to convey the emotion the best in this moment, in this song.
Yeah.
So that's sort of
definitely a journey and a learning experience for projects in the future. And the storytelling piece, what you do on stage is so different than what you do on film. And and I remember when we were at Aaron's studio for the video recording, there were a couple of video shots that we did of Cecilia. And I think it was either, I don't know, it was you, Tricia, or Aaron, that said, there's a difference when you have a close-up than when you see someone on a stage. There's a power in that, in film, that you don't quite see on stage. It's a different experience. Not one is better, but it is quite different.
Right.
Yeah. There's some other questions.
Yeah, I'm going to read one out. This is for you, Mr. Armienta. Could you talk a little about how you compose these pieces? I heard a touch of ranchera music in one of the songs and wondered what other sources you might have drawn to represent the workers.
Yeah, so sort of one of the things that are important to me, I'm a Mexican American, and part of my exploration as an artist is sort of where I am, sort of on both sides of the border. What is Chicano and what is Mexican, and it's part of my exploration to to draw and learn some of these musical idioms. So you hear a little bit of ranchero, and there's a little mariachi in Mi Camino Lindo, in terms of the syncopation. And then in Quién Soy Yo, you hear a little bit of it also. And then you hear, I think, a little bit of rancheros, sort of the thirds for the musicians, the falling thirds, in the opening of El Diez de Marzo. I think Somos Familia is probably the one that is sort of more Eurocentric based. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but there aren't really that many music. There's not really Mexican or Mexican American musical idiom in that. But and just to, summarizing, I guess the last thing I want to say is that I try to write for my audience and for the community and find ways for them to connect to opera. And part of that is incorporating these musical elements that they can relate to. So
we have a question that is specifically for the editor, which would be Jamiro, and for Aaron. How was it editing and shooting a film for an opera? And so I think that's kind of an iteration on the earlier question to the singers, which is like, what was different about this project than other projects you've worked on? What was it like to help make an animated opera? And
from my standpoint, I mean, I've done projects similar to this, and I come from like the theatrical world as well. But merging the two and kind of, we really filmed all the pieces and we had all the building blocks for this. And then kind of, we said, okay, Hector, do you have everything? Okay, here you go, Tricia and Ramiro. Here's all your building blocks. Like, now assemble the Lego castle, go for it. So it was just interesting because when you're putting together like a theatrical production, you have a very linear view of everything. And so when you're putting together a linear piece in a non-linear fashion, it is a little chaotic and very confusing. And so trying to keep, in my mind, when we're shooting in the studio, trying to keep this, final goal in mind while not having it all in front of you is really difficult. And trying to make sure you get enough, but not too much. And, we only had, 5 hours of each singer's time. So it was just a bit of a logistical challenge to make sure, okay, we're getting exactly enough to make sure we get the performance and the real meat of everything, so that we're not going to be left on the editing room floor having to do more drone footage.
Yeah.
Ramiro, can you answer the question as well from the editor's perspective?
I've never edited to an opera, but I felt like I've done music videos. So it was interesting. The animation was interesting and the drone footage was interesting, but it was actually, I'm not going to say easy, but it was great to have the animation, but then cut to the singers. And like Hector, you were saying earlier about how they're emoting, that it was just so easy to go back to these high points when they're singing, and it was just so beautiful. Deborah and one of them, I think it was Diez de Marzo. You're so, well, all of you are fantastic. But this one in specific, I remember because I was like, what are we gonna do? And we cut to the shot and you were just about to cry. And it was really great. It was a lot of fun to go to you and go like, okay, great. We just drove that point home. Excuse me. So yeah, it was and for us, it was very linear. We just asked Aaron and Hector to go, well, okay, now we need this. So we were going in a straight line.
Last week.
Okay, now we're missing this.
Yeah, last week.
And we don't care if you don't sleep tonight, but we need.
That's right. Yeah. So just to share with
time is merely a concept.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There was I just want to mention one thing real quick. So with El Diez de Marzo, Tricia and Ramiro were working on that one, finalizing last week, and they said, we don't have enough footage of the avatars. So Aaron and I both had to create, new footage last minute, but it really, I think, made a difference. And it was the final scenes of El Diez de Marzo with the avatar walking toward, very pensive and then looking out to the ocean. And that was not part of the original storyboard, or that wasn't, and that was not my idea at all. Tricia and Ramiro sort of came up with that. And then, I don't want to get too technical, but they were very clear about what they wanted, where the avatar should be placed on the screen, what angle. And then I had to ask Aaron, please, can you make some more drone footage for us? And can you render, these files, which are, you need, like a powerhouse computer to do, so, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Tricia, you were going to say something.
This is perhaps stating the obvious, but just an overlay for me working on this project as one of the editors and just being involved in it is the Spanish, right? That is such a unique gift to those of us who are working on it. It's so beautiful and lyrical. Somebody mentioned in the chat, it's so interesting to hear an opera in Spanish. But for me, the power of the words of the farm workers, working with Natalie to refine the subtitles and make sure that those stayed poetic and evocative, like it's just such a treat to get to work in Spanish. And that's rare. That's rare. It's rare in film for sure. And it seems to me it's probably fairly rare in opera, right? So I just want to name that, like the power of the language of the people was really resonant.
Yeah, and for those of you that don't know, you know, about 80% of the texts, you know, are their words. And, you know, I embellished where I could, and, you know, to help further with it, you know, the drama of the story that they were telling. But, you know, I tried, you know, I had another project called Cuentos, and it was the same thing where I video interviewed and used their words. And I think it just, you know, there's no way that I could have imagined or created that text. So I'm grateful to those that allowed me to interview them.
So Hector, we have a couple of questions coming through about the future. One is simple, which is there any chance this could be made available in schools? And the second is a bit broader about kind of future dreams for the project. Are you going to make another animated opera? And then kind of on top of that, one of the comments was, it's short for use on stage. Are you planning to continue? So I think that's sort of what's next. What would be the next iteration?
There's a lot of questions, you know, I'm not going to remember. I remember the last one.
Schools, yes, right? You could probably
So I actually had a conversation with a group that represents Latinx superintendents and principals. And so I'm in discussion with them about making that available in some way, as well as working with them in developing curriculum, because one of my goals and the goals of Opera Cultura is to empower youth and people of color by providing them training in this new technology. I don't want them to be left out. There's a big change that's happening in the next 3 to 5 years. And, you know, and young people of color need to be part of that change and be working both on stage as well as behind stage and in film and in television. So that's one of the long-term goals. Yay, Tricia, because I know Tricia advocates that. And of course, Makla does that. Makla, one of the partners with us. And then in terms of the future, I am exploring the idea of taking the work to Mexico in some form, and then bringing it back to the United States in some form. Haven't figured that part out yet. And on a side note, I'm working, I have a piece called La Llorona, a musical drama, and I'm creating something called La Llorona Chronicles, which will be an animated series, and haven't figured out exactly what that's gonna look like. And then finally, I guess I would say for Opera Cultura is the goal is to really incorporate this technology. This was an experiment for us. And it's 16 minutes because it takes a lot of time and it takes money. And so our goal is, we're in conversation with a number of funders to see, you know, how they can support a longer project, and we can utilize it in a main stage production next year, which is a wonderful piece, which I can't announce yet. And it's not one of my operas, but it's a really wonderful piece, and you'll know then. Well, okay, anyway, I can't say anything more than that. But explore bringing that technology on stage, as well as perhaps motion capture, which is, you know, someone wearing a suit and participating in some way with the singers on stage. So that's for Opera Cultura. Did I answer all of that?
Yep, you did. You did. So this one is for the singers. Do you think you feel more comfortable doing film-like operas in the future, whether you're going back to the stage? So what's your future hold for you, opera singers?
I'll go first. I can't wait to get back on stage in person. It's my favorite thing. There's just nothing like it. I've really enjoyed doing the film thing, and it's giving me a whole new respect for film actors, because it is a very different skill set because, you know, in an opera, when it's running live, you're backstage and you're like, I'm going to go on in exactly 1.5 minutes. You know that from rehearsal. So you're getting psyched and you're getting yourself into the mode and whatever. And then you're on and you go. With film, you do a little bit and everyone says stop. And then you do a little bit more and stop. And it can be very challenging to stay in it. Does that make sense? So I would love to do more in the future if the opportunity presents itself, and I definitely keep practicing. That's a new skill set for me for sure.
If it's possible tomorrow, back to the on stage, that's great. Oh, I had some projects on hold, so I'm pretty sure soon we're gonna be back. But this experience was so great, and I hope repeat it again.
Yeah, kind of piggybacking on what my colleagues said, this was definitely a very eye-opening experience for me. I had never been in the world of film, and just so being able to, again, I guess, do this project was see the different layers, the individual layers, and then putting them together, and it's just a really just broken down piece when we started working on it. And so that for me was, I wasn't expecting that, I guess is what I'm saying. And so like Deborah said, it's a skill set that I hope we can use, you know, to be better performers. But yes, definitely, there's nothing like the theater, having the audience sitting there, breathing with you almost, you know, and I can't wait. I can't wait to get in front of an actual audience. Not that we didn't love this, maestro. This is fun.
No, it's okay. I'm not hurt. No estoy llorando. I'm okay.
This took a village to make, you know, but in a different way. And a live show, the same. It takes a village to put everything together, and it's just, you know, I think it's made us better performers, this project. So thank you for having us be a part of it.
Hector, we have a few questions that have come through about your relationship to the farm workers that you interviewed. Folks are curious if they have seen the project, if they've had a reaction to it. I know that we just finished it, so they probably haven't seen it yet. So what is the plan for sharing it with them?
Yeah, so we've been in contact with I think all except one of the participants. I don't think we were able to. Yeah, we were not able to reach her. We were not able to reach her. And so they've been participating at some level. We asked them to follow up with you know, we wanted to see what was happening, you know, in their lives. And so they've actually posted videos giving us updates. It's on our Facebook page. This is the first time that anyone has seen it. The singers just saw it this morning. So I am very interested to see what, you know, to learn about what their reaction is to the work. You know, it's, you know, they told their stories, and then of course, you know, it's, you know, when you put it to music and you change some of it and you emphasize this or that, you know, becomes a different piece. I do want to just talk a little bit, where are we with time? Because we're going to end at 8, yeah? So about film, about live performance. You know, initially this was, doing it as a film was a response to, you know, if we had done a live performance, which I haven't shared here, is that I originally was going to do something about dreamers and focus on their lives, both those that lived here as well as those that were deported during the Trump administration. And then when I saw what happened with the farm workers and the pandemic, I switched gears, and then I switched gears to make it about a film. And it's not a one-time shot, because I think that that opera is changing in the way that we present it, in the way that we record it, and also in having what we call, you know, what they call digital content. And I really see that there is a, you know, if you think of a Venn diagram, there's a convergence that I feel must happen for live performance to really flourish. And part of that is creating this digital content. And I would say to the singers that my first love is the theater. That's why I'm not a symphonic composer, really, you know. That's why I'm not really a choral composer. I love theater. There's a power of theater, there's a power of an orchestra, there's a power of having performers, an audience. But I think all of you have seen what amazing artists you are on film. And I think there are opportunities for you in this new digital age to expand and to, you know, share your wonderful talent as well as other sources of income. So, so that's all I'm gonna say.
Okay.
There are, to add one thing there, the interesting thing about this project is I've seen a lot come out of the pandemic where like, this is how we perform, right? This is the only way we've been able to do theater and do live performances via film and via virtual hybridized performance. And so this is, I think, Hector, what's interesting is seeing how you take this in the future and take the learnings out of this to decide what bits of it you take and what parts are important and what, you know, what really makes the performance feel live and how you get all the emotion out of that, but put people in person or, you know, take this to the next level. I think there are some magic parts obviously there's like some magic we found here and all the performances were really amazing. This is a way to do what we all love doing in a time where we couldn't all be in the same room.
Yeah.
And so it'll be really interesting to see what comes out of it.
Yeah. I just want to say two more things. This, you know, we were at Visual Endeavors for the video recording, and there was one green screen. And so that's one of the reasons the movement was somewhat restricted. But I really envision working Visual Endeavors to have a larger space in the future where there can be much more movement, because I think we've just shown a glimpse of what is possible in this technology. It's just changing every month. And lastly, what I hope and what I'm working on is to have, you know, after a Mexico City presentation on a smaller scale, is to have a large presentation in the United States in an evening with an orchestra, an audience, and the singers performing. And then behind them is all of the great imagery, that video imagery that we've created live, as well as dancers wearing motion capture suits to capture some of the emotion of the singers and create their own movement. So that is the kind of way to bring all of these technologies and experiences together. And, you know, that would just be an amazing event. People, you know, I think would really be blown away. So
I'd be on the sidelines being like, Hector, what's the heart of the story? Hector, where's the narrative?
It would really just be Tricia and I beating up Hector in a Zoom call. Yeah.
I'm going to do the movement.
So we have a couple questions here specifically for the singers. Emmanuel, tenemos una pregunta en español. Señor Mercado, ¿qué consejo le daría a los jóvenes para interesarles más en el arte de ópera? Por favor, en español.
Siento que la ópera, que los compositores hasta cierto punto han fallado, porque estos temas como este que tratamos es precisamente el tema que puede acercar a los jóvenes. Es un tema que es local, que es personal, que está cerca porque es trabajo, no nomás en el campo también pueden ser muchas cosas, pero son temas de la calle, del trabajo, y a veces hemos olvidado eso y llevamos los temas a historias muy elevadas, supuestamente, puesto que esta es una historia fuertísima, emocionante y dura y verdadera, y siento que eso acercaría mucho a la gente. Decir, oh, esta es una ópera de un campo, de unos pescadores, y resulta que tenemos tíos, hermanos, nosotros mismos, que somos eso. ¿Qué tal una historia en la calle, en la esquina? Una ópera en la esquina de una calle. Eso es lo que dices, oh, ese es mi tema, yo quiero ver eso. Eso sería todo.
Gracias, perfecto. That matches a lot of the conversation happening in the thread here, where people are talking about these are our stories. These are stories of the street. These are stories of the people. This will resonate more potentially with young people, with young Latinx people. It's not so elevated that you can't understand it. It's about your family and your own stories. So
Yeah.
folks are agreeing with you as you're saying what you just shared with us in Spanish. Thank you. And then to the singers, all of you, folks would like to hear a little bit about your origin stories. How did you become interested in being an opera singer? And partly that's from, if we're going to bring this work to youth, if we're going to sort of interest a broader audience in opera, tell us about your story a little bit.
I tried to play heavy metal. And one of the classes was the choir. They test me, hey, you can sing. Okay, I have to do it. And I forgot the metal and I love the opera. So no more metal. That was the hook, just the hook.
Would Deborah or Cecilia like to answer?
Sure. My grandma got me into opera. She saw her first opera in Bellas Artes when she was 5 years old, doing the entire ring cycle, which blows my mind because I know most adults can't sit through the entire ring cycle, let alone a 5-year-old.
Wow.
But I always loved to sing, and so she pushed me to try opera. And I think honestly, you do it and you're hooked. So, I mean, I was very lucky in that I grew up here in the Bay Area, and there was a teen opera at the time, and I got to do that. And before that, I was doing music and I was doing theater, but I wasn't doing them together. So, opera was the meeting of those worlds and accessing all of those skills at the same time. And I thought, this is amazing. So I honestly, I just, even if you're not trying to become an opera singer, just being exposed to it and maybe participating in it on some level, it takes it off, what Emmanuel was saying about the lofty subjects, it takes it off the pedestal. Because, no, I don't think anyone intended opera to be on the pedestal in the first place. So we've put it there. And I think we need to bring it back to the people to make it the entertainment that it always was for everybody, So I mean, that's my hope, and that's how I got hooked.
I was actually introduced to opera later in my adult life. I was in my 20s, but I grew up singing mariachi music out in the fields with my mom. And so that was my musical exposure. My mother was the one that she taught me how to sing in harmony out in the peat fields, because she used the music to make the hours go by faster, because we hated being out there. I mean, it's a lot of hard work being out in the sun from sunrise to sundown, and it's whether it's hot or if it's raining or whatever. And so yeah, todas las canciones viejitas de Pedro Infante, Vicente Fernández, Miguel Aceves Mejía, Lola Beltrán, all of the greats, those are the ones that the songs that my mom taught me. And I was studying to become a music teacher at UNLV in Las Vegas, Nevada. And that is when I saw my first opera. It was La Boheme. And I went because everyone else was going. And I wanted to go be supportive of my upper classmates. And I had never been to an opera before. I'd never been to a live theater experience, anything. And so I went in not knowing what to expect, and just seeing the hustle and bustle of the audience trying to find their seats and their programs that are just making noises in their hands, and then the surtitles and the sound of the orchestra and all of my classmates in the pit, and just the whole experience. It was just completely mesmerizing. And I was convinced that Mimi was going to live in La Boheme. And when she died in the end, I looked over to my ex-husband now. I looked over to him, se murió Mimi, se murió, she died. I was in tears, just completely distraught. But that was, for me, was the turning point. I said that instead of what my classmates on that stage, what they made me feel, is what I want to do. I want to be able to be a storyteller like them. I want to know what they're doing with their voices, and I want to explore this vast operatic repertoire that's existed for years. And like Deborah said, bring it to the people, because that's what it is. They're just stories, son historias. I tell my mom, las novelas or las óperas son como las novelas. There's always some sort of drama unfolding. There's hay comedia, hay amor, someone's about to kill someone else. There's always something happening. And so I guess, I don't know, there's a connection to the art form. It's very special to me because of the musical foundation that I have from my mom, but then being able to, I guess, connect the two worlds of the música ranchera and that passion, and to be able to take that passion and put it into the world of opera, I think it's a no-brainer for me. I feel, I love it.
Hector, that's your next movie there.
Yeah,
Right?
you tell that story.
Tell that story.
Well,
Tell the
that's going to be
story.
more than 16 minutes.
So we do need to conclude. I wanted to say there's a comment in the chat. One of the many aspects I love about Mi Camino is how it brings our stories and our music into the center of a space, opera, where our lived experience has not been honored. Thank you, Hector, for the work you do. Would you like to close, Hector?
Sure. So I believe that everything is, anything is possible, really. Yeah. And that a lot of people empower you to fulfill a dream. So this was not a single effort. And I'm grateful to all of the artists here, the artistic personnel, my husband, especially, and the Opera Cultura staff, and Tamara Liu, she's on here, I believe, still, and she's a former executive director, and she really helped to make this all happen. And our wonderful Natalie Herrera, who will be moving up in terms of management. She will become the program director for our new program called La Escuela, and our new production manager effective July. So, and of course, thank you to all of the foundations and our donors. And some of you, I see you here, and I read all of your comments. I've been scrolling through, so thank you. And look for Opera Cultura to be doing more work next year incorporating this new technology, and getting back to live performance, and then live performance with all this other technology. So thank you.